The California sun had long surrendered to the cool embrace of night when Deputy Logan Reed pulled his patrol car into the gravel lot of Mercer's gas station. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting pale shadows across the empty pumps. It was nearly midnight on a Thursday in late October 2024, and Highway 46 through the San Benito Valley lay eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that made veteran officers uneasy. Logan stepped out, stretching his shoulders after 3 hours of monotonous patrol. The air smelled of dried grass and distant wildfires, a scent that had become all too familiar in recent California autumns. He nodded to the night clerk through the window, a college kid named Ethan Ward who worked the graveyard shift to pay for his engineering degree at Cal Poly. "Quiet night?" Ethan called out, pushing open the door. "Dead," Logan replied, accepting the coffee Ethan handed him. "Which usually means something's about to happen." Ethan laughed nervously. "You really believe in that cop superstition?" Before Logan could answer, his radio crackled to life. "Unit 7, this is dispatch. We've got another hit on the automated plate reader at mile marker 23. Same vehicle as last week. Black Chevrolet Camaro, California Plate Valley 1. Can you respond?" Logan's jaw tightened. He'd heard the stories every deputy in San Benito County had. For the past 6 weeks, traffic cameras had been capturing images of a pristine black 1979 Camaro Z28 racing through the valley at speeds exceeding 90 miles per hour. The strange part? The vehicle always appeared between midnight and 3 in the morning, and by dawn, it had vanished without a trace. "Copy that, dispatch. En route to marker 23. Ethan's eyes widened. "The ghost car? You're actually going after it?" Logan paused at his cruiser door. "There's no such thing as ghosts, kid. Just people playing games." But even as he said it, a chill ran down his spine that had nothing to do with the October breeze. The drive to mile marker 23 took 12 minutes. Logan kept his speed measured, eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of the mysterious Camaro. The valley stretched out on both sides of the highway, vast fields of dormant crops creating an ocean of shadows beneath the quarter moon. This section of road had seen its share of tragedy over the decades. Narrow curves, sudden dips, and the occasional driver who underestimated the terrain. His headlights caught the reflective marker. 23. Logan slowed to a crawl, pulling onto the shoulder. The automated camera stood on a metal pole 15 feet high, its lens pointed at the northbound lane. These devices had been installed 2 years ago as part of a county-wide initiative to track stolen vehicles and wanted suspects. They worked flawlessly, which made the Camaro situation all the more puzzling. Logan grabbed his flashlight and approached the camera housing. Everything appeared normal. No signs of tampering, no graffiti, no indication that someone had hacked the system to insert fake images. He'd checked the footage himself last week at the station. The Camaro looked absolutely real, captured in perfect detail as it screamed past the camera at 1:47 a.m. The plate, Valley 1, had been registered to a man named Aiden Cole, dead since November 14, 1980, 44 years ago, almost to the day. Logan's radio crackled again. "Unit 7, dispatch. We've got a civilian call coming in. Driver reports seeing a black Camaro heading south on 46, approximately mile marker 31. Says it passed her doing at least 85 and didn't have its lights on." "Copy. Heading north to intercept." Logan's pulse quickened as he climbed back into his cruiser. Civilian witnesses changed everything. This wasn't just a camera glitch anymore. He hit the gas, accelerating into the night with his light bar dark. If someone was out here impersonating a dead man's car, he wanted the element of surprise. The speedometer climbed to 70, then 80. The road curved gently through the valley, agricultural land giving way to scattered oak trees and rocky hillsides. Mile marker 31 approached quickly. Logan slowed, killed his engine, and coasted to the shoulder. He cut all his lights and waited. Silence enveloped the valley. No engine sounds, no tire noise, nothing but the whisper of wind through dry grass. Logan checked his watch. 12:47 a.m. He'd give it 15 minutes, then move on. 13 minutes later, he heard it. A deep, rumbling growl that sent vibrations through the ground. The unmistakable sound of a high-performance V8 engine. Logan's hand instinctively moved to his door handle, but he forced himself to wait. The sound grew louder, approaching from the south at incredible speed. Then he saw it. Headlights off, moving like a shadow through the darkness, the black Camaro Z28 materialized around the curve. Even in the dim moonlight, Logan could make out its distinctive shape. The aggressive front end, the hood scoop, the wide stance of a muscle car built for pure speed. It had to be doing 90, maybe 95. Yet it handled the road with supernatural precision. Logan's heart hammered in his chest. He reached for his radio, but his hand froze when he glimpsed the driver. Through the Camaro's window, illuminated by the faint green glow of the dashboard, sat a young man with dark hair and sharp features. He wore a leather jacket and kept both hands on the wheel, his expression intense and focused. For a split second, their eyes met. And then the Camaro was gone, disappearing around the next curve with a roar that faded into the night like a closing door. Logan sat stunned for several heartbeats before snatching up his radio. "Dispatch, Unit 7. Visual confirmation on the black Camaro. I'm in pursuit, northbound on 46 from marker 31. He fired up his engine and tore after the fleeing vehicle, light bar blazing red and blue across the valley landscape. The cruiser's V6 struggled to match the Camaro's speed, but Logan kept the throttle pinned. This wasn't a ghost. It was a real person in a real car, and he was going to catch them. Mile marker 34 flashed past, then 35. The road straightened for a half-mile stretch, and Logan could see the Camaro's taillights burning like red eyes in the distance. But as the highway curved again toward marker 37, something impossible happened. The taillights simply vanished. Not gradually, not as the car went around a curve. They just blinked out of existence as if someone had flipped a switch. Logan slammed on his brakes, skidding slightly before regaining control. He accelerated through the curve, expecting to see the Camaro pulled over, hidden, or crashed. But the road ahead lay completely empty. No side roads, no driveways, no possible escape routes. The Camaro had simply ceased to exist. "Dispatch, Unit 7. Logan's voice came out hoarse. "I've lost visual on the subject vehicle. It's gone. Copy, Unit 7. Do you need backup?" Logan stared at the empty highway ahead, his hands trembling slightly on the wheel. "Negative, dispatch. Returning to patrol." But as he turned the cruiser around, his headlights swept across something that made his blood run cold. There, on the shoulder near mile marker 37, stood a weathered wooden cross. Faded plastic flowers clung to its base, and a small plaque bore a name and date, Aiden Cole, November 14th, 1980. Logan had passed this memorial 100 times, never giving it much thought. But now, in the aftermath of what he'd just witnessed, it felt like a marker for something far more significant than a simple traffic accident. He reached for his phone and dialed a number he'd been avoiding for weeks. It rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered, thick with sleep. "This better be important, Reed." "Harper, it's me. I need to talk to you about the Camaro, and about Aiden Cole." There was a long pause. "You saw it?" "Yeah, I saw it." "Come to my place tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. "And Logan?" Harper Lane's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Bring whatever courage you've got left. Because what I'm going to tell you is going to change everything you think you know about that night in 1980. Logan ended the call and sat in his cruiser, watching the memorial cross in his rearview mirror as a cold wind rattled through the valley. Somewhere in the darkness, an engine rumbled once more before falling silent. The hunt had begun. Harper Lane's house sat at the end of a dirt road 3 miles west of downtown San Benito, a small ranch-style structure surrounded by ancient oak trees that filtered the morning sunlight into scattered gold coins across the ground. Logan arrived at precisely 9 o'clock, parking his personal truck next to Harper's dusty blue Subaru. He'd barely slept after his encounter with the Camaro, his mind replaying that impossible moment when the taillights had simply vanished. Harper opened the door before he could knock. At 53, she carried herself with the wary intensity of someone who'd spent decades digging through uncomfortable truths. She'd retired from the San Benito County Sheriff's Department 5 years ago after 28 years of service, most of it in investigations. Now she worked as a private researcher and historical consultant, though Logan suspected her real occupation was something closer to obsession. "Coffee's on the counter," she said, gesturing him inside. "You look like hell, by the way." "Didn't sleep much." "Yeah, well, after today, you might not sleep at all." Harper led him through a living room packed with filing cabinets, cardboard boxes, and cork boards covered in photographs and documents connected by colored string. "Welcome to my rabbit hole." Logan accepted a mug of black coffee and studied the nearest cork board. It was dedicated entirely to the Camaro, dozens of camera captures showing the vehicle from different angles, all time-stamped between midnight and 3 a.m. over the past 6 weeks. But these weren't the only images. Harper had collected older photographs too, black and white pictures from decades past showing the same distinctive car at various locations throughout the valley. "Jesus, Harper, how long has this been going on?" "Depends on how you define this." She pulled a worn manila folder from a filing cabinet. "The camera hits started 6 weeks ago, yeah, but sightings of that specific Camaro, they go back 44 years. She dropped the folder on the coffee table between them. "Meet Aiden Cole, 22 years old when he died. November 14th, 1980, approximately 2:30 in the morning." Logan opened the folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, and photographs of a young man with dark hair and sharp features, the same face he'd glimpsed behind the Camaro's wheel. Aiden Cole stared out from his driver's license photo with an intensity that seemed to transcend the paper. "Single vehicle accident," Logan read aloud. "Lost control on Highway 46 near mile marker 37, struck an embankment at high speed. Pronounced dead at the scene." He looked up. "This is the memorial I passed last night." Harper nodded grimly. Aiden was a local kid. Grew up in San Benito, worked at his father's auto shop after high school. By all accounts, he was a decent guy. Quiet, kept to himself mostly, but well-liked. Had a girlfriend named Riley Quinn. They'd been together since junior year. What happened? According to the investigation, Aiden had been at a party earlier that evening, left around midnight, completely sober according to witnesses. Drove home on Highway 46, same route he'd taken 1,000 times. But somewhere near marker 37, he lost control. The investigating officer, Deputy Mason Graves, he's long retired now, concluded that Aiden must have fallen asleep at the wheel or been distracted somehow. Logan flipped through the accident report. The details were sparse but troubling. No skid marks, no mechanical failure. The Camaro had simply left the road at speed and collided with an embankment with such force that Aiden had died instantly. "Except that doesn't explain the sightings," Logan said. "No, it doesn't." Harper pulled out another folder, this one much thicker. Starting about 2 weeks after Aiden's death, people began reporting a black Camaro matching his vehicle's description driving Highway 46 late at night. Always between midnight and 3 a.m. Always without lights. Always driving like hell itself was chasing it. She spread out witness statements across the table, handwritten notes from the early 1980s, typed reports from the 90s, and recent printouts from the department's computer system. Dozens of them, spanning 4 decades. Most deputies wrote it off as copycat drivers or people who'd had too much to drink, Harper continued. But the descriptions were always too consistent. Black 1979 Camaro Z28, California Plate Valley 1. And every single witness described the same driver. Young man, dark hair, leather jacket, intense expression. Logan felt a chill despite the warm coffee in his hands. You're saying people have been seeing Aiden Cole's ghost for 44 years. I'm saying something's been happening on that stretch of road for 44 years, and nobody's been able to explain it. Harper's voice was measured, careful. I don't know if it's a ghost, a glitch in reality, or something else entirely. But I know it's real because I've seen it too. When? September 1987. I was a rookie deputy, barely 6 months on the job. Got dispatched to investigate a reckless driving complaint on 46. Found the Camaro doing at least 85 near marker 29. Pursued it for 2 miles before it disappeared exactly the way you described. Just blinked out of existence near the memorial cross. Harper's hands trembled slightly as she poured herself more coffee. I filed a report. My training officer laughed it off, told me I'd been working too many night shifts. But I knew what I saw, so I started digging. What did you find? A pattern. She pulled out a calendar marked with dozens of red X's. The sightings aren't random. They cluster around specific dates, mostly in late October and early November within 2 weeks of Aiden's death date. Some years there are no sightings at all. Other years, like this one, there are dozens. Logan studied the calendar. Sure enough, the red X's showed a clear pattern, with the heaviest concentration falling between November 1st and November 14th. This year marks 44 years since Aiden died, Harper said quietly, and the sightings started earlier and have been more frequent than any year I've documented. It's like something's building toward the anniversary. Have you talked to Riley Quinn, Aiden's girlfriend? She left the valley 2 months after he died. Moved to Oregon, changed her name, never came back. I tracked her down about 10 years ago, called her, but she hung up the minute I mentioned Aiden's name. Whatever happened that night affected her deeply. Logan leaned back, processing the flood of information. Part of him wanted to dismiss all of this as collective delusion, but he couldn't ignore what he'd seen with his own eyes. The Camaro had been real, solid, loud, driven by someone who looked exactly like the dead man in these photographs. There's one more thing, Harper said, hesitation creeping into her voice. Something I didn't include in any of my research files because it sounds completely insane. After everything you've just told me, I think insane is relative. She pulled out a final photograph, this one recent, printed from a digital camera. It showed the interior of what appeared to be an old auto shop, tools hanging on walls, a vintage Coca-Cola sign, and in the center, a black Camaro Z28 up on a hydraulic lift. I took this 3 days ago at Cole Automotive on Palmetto Street. That's Aiden's father's old shop. Connor Cole ran it until he died in 2019. Then his nephew Tyler Shaw inherited the property. The shop's been closed for years, but Tyler still owns the building. And that's Aiden's Camaro? According to Tyler, yes. He showed me the registration. Original Valley 1 plate. VIN matches the one from the 1980 accident report. The car's been sitting in that shop for 44 years. Covered in dust, hasn't been started since before Aiden died. Logan's coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. That's impossible. I chased that car last night. It was running perfectly. I know. Harper's eyes met his with an intensity that bordered on desperate. That's why we need to figure out what the hell is actually happening here. Because either there are 2 identical Camaros with the same license plate, or something is very, very wrong with reality in the San Benito Valley. A knock at the door interrupted them. Harper frowned. She clearly wasn't expecting anyone. She opened it to reveal a young woman in her mid-20s with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore jeans and a Cal Poly sweatshirt and carried a worn messenger bag over one shoulder. Harper Lane. My name is Zoe Vance. I'm a journalism student at Cal Poly, and I'm investigating the Valley Ghost car for my senior thesis. I was told you might be able to help me. Harper glanced at Logan, who shrugged. The more the merrier, I guess. Come in, Harper said. But fair warning, you're about to go down a rabbit hole that might not have a bottom. Zoe's eyes lit up as she took in the room full of research materials. Perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Tyler Shaw had the weathered look of someone who'd spent his life working with his hands, calloused fingers, grease permanently embedded under his fingernails, and the kind of lean strength that came from years of wrestling with stubborn machinery. At 41, he'd inherited Cole Automotive from his late Uncle Connor, though he'd long since moved his actual business to a modern facility across town. The old shop remained frozen in time, a monument to a family business that had died with its founder. Logan, Harper, and Zoe arrived at the shop just after noon on Friday, the day after their initial meeting. The building sat on Palmetto Street in what used to be San Benito's commercial district, now mostly empty storefronts and for-lease signs. Cole Automotive's faded sign still hung above the main bay door, paint peeling but letters still legible. Tyler met them at the side entrance, wiping his hands on a red shop rag. Harper said you wanted to see the car. Fair warning, it's not much to look at anymore. He led them through a cluttered office filled with ancient calendars, parts catalogs, and framed photographs of classic cars. The shop floor beyond was vast and dim, sunlight filtering through dusty windows high in the walls. In the center, covered by a gray tarp, sat an unmistakable shape. "Before I show you," Tyler said, "you need to understand something about my Uncle Connor. After Aiden died, Uncle Connor never fully recovered. They weren't just father and son, they were partners. Aiden was supposed to take over this shop eventually. When he crashed, it broke something in Uncle Connor. He covered the Camaro, locked the shop door, and never touched it again." Tyler pulled the tarp free with a practiced motion, revealing the 1979 Camaro Z28 beneath. Logan felt his breath catch. This was definitely the same model he'd pursued. Same body style, same aggressive stance. But where the car he'd chased had been pristine, gleaming black even in darkness, this vehicle was a ruin. Thick dust coated every surface. The paint, once glossy black, had faded to a matte charcoal gray. The tires were flat, dry-rotted beyond repair. Spiderwebs stretched between the hood and windshield. The California license plate, Valley 1, hung slightly askew, its yellow letters dulled by decades of neglect. Zoe circled the vehicle slowly, taking photographs with her phone. "Can we look inside?" "Door's not locked." Tyler opened the driver's side door with a screech of protesting metal. The interior was in similar condition. Seats cracked and faded, dashboard covered in grime, the distinctive green glow of the instrument panel long since extinguished. Logan leaned in, inhaling the musty smell of old upholstery. This car hadn't been driven in 44 years. That much was obvious. Yet he'd seen an identical vehicle running perfectly just 36 hours ago. "Tyler," Harper said carefully, "has anyone else been interested in this car? Anyone asking questions, trying to buy it, anything unusual? Not in the 5 years since Uncle Connor died? Before that?" Tyler shrugged. Uncle Connor wouldn't talk about it. He was pretty clear that the car stayed exactly where it was, no matter what. "Did your uncle ever mention the sightings?" Logan asked. "People claiming to see Aiden driving on Highway 46? Tyler's expression darkened. He heard the stories. Everyone in the valley heard them. Some people thought it was romantic, the ghost of a young man unable to rest. Uncle Connor thought it was cruel. He said people were either lying for attention or delusional, and either way, they were disrespecting Aiden's memory. Zoe had moved to the back of the car, examining the rear end. "Harper, you said the accident report mentioned significant rear impact damage, but this car looks intact." Harper frowned and joined her. Logan followed, his investigator's instincts prickling. Zoe was right. The back of the Camaro showed the normal wear of age, but no signs of the catastrophic damage that should have resulted from a high-speed collision with an embankment. "Tyler, was this car ever repaired after the accident?" Logan asked. "No. That was part of Uncle Connor's thing, leaving it exactly as it was the night Aiden died." "Then where's the damage?" Tyler's confidence faltered. What do you mean? The accident report said, I read the report, Logan interrupted. Front-end collision, driver's side impact, extensive structural damage. But this car's front end looks fine under all that dust. They moved back to the front of the vehicle. Logan grabbed a shop rag and wiped away decades of grime from the hood and grille. Beneath the dust, the metal showed age and corrosion, but no impact damage. No bent frame, no replaced panels, no telltale signs of repair work. That doesn't make sense, Tyler said, bewilderment creeping into his voice. I saw the photos from the accident scene. The car was destroyed. Do you still have those photos? Harper asked sharply. Uncle Connor kept everything in the office. Give me a minute. While Tyler rummaged through filing cabinets, Zoe pulled Harper and Logan aside. Okay, let's logic this out. We have camera footage and eyewitness testimony of a pristine black Camaro Z28 driving Highway 46. We have this car, same make and model, same license plate, sitting in a locked shop for 44 years. And somehow, the condition of this car doesn't match the accident that supposedly killed its owner. Either the accident report is wrong, Logan said, or we're missing a crucial piece of information. Tyler returned with a manila envelope. Found them. Uncle Connor labeled everything meticulously. He spread black and white photographs across the hood of a nearby workbench. Logan's stomach tightened as he examined them. The images showed the accident scene in stark detail. The Camaro crumpled against a roadside embankment, its front end compressed like an accordion, the driver's door bent inward, glass scattered across the highway. In one particularly disturbing photo, emergency responders worked around a sheet-covered form in the front seat. That's definitely the same intersection, Harper said, pointing to landmarks visible in the background. Mile marker 37, same embankment. But that's not this car, Zoe insisted. She held up her phone, showing a picture she'd just taken of the Camaro in the shop. Look at the body lines, the door panels. This car has never been in that kind of accident. Logan felt reality shifting beneath his feet. He picked up one of the accident photos and studied it closely. There, barely visible beneath the layer of road dust coating the wrecked Camaro, he could make out the license plate. Valley 1. Could there have been two cars? He asked. Maybe Aiden owned two identical Camaros? Tyler shook his head. Not possible. Z28s weren't common, and nobody registers two vehicles with the same vanity plate. California DMV would never allow it. Then what are we looking at? Logan's frustration was mounting. Because something's very wrong here. Harper had gone quiet, her eyes distant as she processed information. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that made everyone stop and listen. What if the car we've been chasing isn't Aiden's original Camaro? What if someone's been building an exact replica? Why would anyone do that? Zoe asked. I don't know, but it would explain the discrepancies. It would explain why camera footage shows a perfect car while this one sits here deteriorating. It doesn't explain the driver, Logan countered. I saw his face, Harper. It was Aiden Cole. I've been staring at his photographs for the past 24 hours. Same features, same age, same expression. Unless you're suggesting someone who looks exactly like a dead man is driving around in a replica of his car? The shop fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic on Palmetto Street. Each person grappled with the impossibility of the situation, trying to force the pieces into a logical pattern. Tyler cleared his throat. There's one person who might know more. Riley Quinn, Aiden's girlfriend. I know Harper said she moved away, but my uncle mentioned once that she came back to the valley a few years ago. He saw her at a grocery store but didn't approach her. You're saying Riley Quinn is back in San Benito? Harper's voice rose with excitement. After all these years? Maybe. It was just one sighting, and Uncle Connor wasn't exactly reliable near the end. The dementia was pretty advanced. Logan pulled out his phone. Give me a description and last known details. If she's here, I can find her through DMV records. Logan, you can't just... Harper started. I'm a deputy investigating a reckless driving case. If Riley Quinn has information relevant to that investigation, I'm well within my rights to interview her." His tone left no room for argument. "Besides, we're running out of time. November 14th is exactly 1 week away, and based on your research, that's when things are going to escalate." Zoe had been silent, her journalistic mind clearly working through angles. What if it's not about the car at all? What if someone's trying to send a message? Maybe whoever's driving that Camaro wants us to investigate Aiden's death. "You think he was murdered?" Tyler's voice cracked. "I think a single vehicle accident with no skid marks, no mechanical failure, and a completely sober driver is suspicious. Add in 44 years of supernatural sightings, and yeah, I think there's more to this story than a tragic accident." Harper gathered the accident scene photos, her movements deliberate. "Then we need to find out what really happened that night in 1980, and the only person who might still have answers is Riley Quinn." "If she'll talk to us," Logan added. "She will." Harper's jaw set with determination. Because if someone's been hiding the truth about Aiden's death for 44 years, that secret is about to come to light. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across Palmetto Street. In the shop, the dust-covered Camaro sat in silent testimony to a tragedy that refused to fade into history. And somewhere in the San Benito Valley, another version of that same car waited for midnight, when its engine would roar to life once more. Riley Quinn lived in a modest townhouse on the eastern edge of San Benito, in a development that had been built in the early 2000s on what used to be orchards. Logan found her address through DMV records. She'd moved back to California in 2018, though she'd kept a low profile, working remotely as a graphic designer and rarely venturing into the old downtown where she and Aiden had once spent their youth. It was Saturday morning when Logan, Harper, and Zoe arrived at her door. Logan had called ahead, identifying himself as a deputy and requesting an interview about an ongoing investigation. Riley had agreed with a weariness in her voice that suggested she'd been expecting this conversation for a very long time. She answered on the first knock, a woman in her early 60s with gray-streaked blonde hair pulled back in a loose bun. Her eyes were the pale blue of faded denim, and they carried the kind of sadness that never fully heals. She wore jeans and a simple navy sweater, and her hands trembled slightly as she gestured them inside. "I wondered when someone would finally come asking questions," Riley said, leading them to a living room decorated with understated elegance. Watercolor paintings, her own work, Logan guessed, covered the walls. "Especially this close to the anniversary." "You know about the sightings," Harper said. It wasn't a question. Riley settled into an armchair, her hands folded in her lap. "I've known about them since they started, 2 weeks after Aiden died. His best friend, Jordan Cross, called me in Oregon and said people were seeing Aiden's car on Highway 46. I told him it was impossible. I told myself it was grief making people imagine things." She paused, her eyes distant. "But I knew it wasn't imagination. Because you saw something that night," Zoe prompted gently, her journalist's intuition proving sharp. Riley's laugh was bitter. "I saw everything that night. I was there when Aiden died. I just didn't tell anyone." The room fell silent. Logan felt his pulse quicken. This was the break they'd been searching for, the missing piece that could explain 4 decades of mystery. "Tell us what happened," Harper said softly. "From the beginning." Riley took a deep breath, her eyes focusing on a point in the middle distance, as if watching events replay before her. "November 14th, 1980. Friday night. There was a party at Mason Graves's house. He was Deputy Graves's son, home on leave from the Army. Aiden and I went together. We stayed until about 11:30, then left. We took my car because Aiden said the Camaro was making a weird noise, and he didn't want to drive it until he could check it out." "Wait," Logan interrupted. "Aiden wasn't driving the Camaro that night?" "No. That's what I tried to tell the police afterward, but Deputy Graves said I was confused, in shock. He insisted that Aiden must have gone back for his car after dropping me off. Riley's hands clenched. But that's not what happened. We were driving home together in my Honda Civic when we saw the Camaro on Highway 46. You saw Aiden's car? With someone else driving it? Exactly. We were heading south toward my parents' house when this black Camaro blew past us going north. No headlights, doing at least 90. Aiden recognized it immediately. His car, his license plate. He couldn't understand how someone had stolen it from the party. We turned around and followed. Riley's voice began to shake, decades of suppressed emotion surfacing. We chased that car for almost 3 miles. Whoever was driving knew the roads perfectly, taking curves at speeds that should have been impossible. Aiden was frantic. That Camaro was his pride and joy. His father had helped him restore it from a wreck. He kept saying we had to stop them before they killed themselves. And then we reached mile marker 37. The Camaro suddenly accelerated even more, like the driver had decided to end the chase. It went around that curve near the embankment, you know the one, and just lost control. It happened so fast. 1 second the car was on the road, the next it was airborne, and then... She closed her eyes. The impact was horrific. The sound of metal crumpling, glass shattering. The Camaro hit that embankment head-on and just crumpled like a tin can. Zoe leaned forward. Did you see the driver? Aiden made me stay in my car while he ran to help. I watched him pull open what was left of the driver's door, and that's when he started screaming. Riley's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I couldn't see clearly from where I was parked, but I heard him. He kept shouting, it's me, over and over again. Logan felt his skin prickle. What does that mean? I don't know. By the time I worked up the courage to approach, Aiden had backed away from the car. He was pale, shaking, looked like he was about to pass out. He grabbed me and said we had to leave right now. We couldn't be there. I wanted to call for help, but Aiden said it was too late. The driver was already dead. He dragged me back to my Honda and we drove away. You left the scene of a fatal accident? Logan tried to keep judgment from his voice. We were 22 years old, terrified, and Aiden was acting like he'd seen something that broke his mind. Riley's eyes glistened with unshed tears. We drove to a rest stop about 10 miles south and just sat there for hours. Aiden wouldn't talk, wouldn't explain what he'd seen. He just kept staring at his hands like they weren't real anymore. Harper pulled out her notebook. What happened next? Around 3 in the morning, Aiden finally spoke. He said we could never tell anyone what we'd witnessed. He said no one would believe us, and if we tried to explain, we'd both end up in psychiatric hospitals. He made me promise, made me swear on everything we meant to each other, that I would never mention that night to anyone. And you kept that promise, Zoe said, even after Aiden died. Riley nodded, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. 2 days later, Deputy Graves came to my parents' house. He said Aiden had been killed in a single-vehicle accident on Highway 46. Said he'd lost control of his Camaro near mile marker 37, same spot where we'd seen the crash. I was so confused. I knew Aiden was alive, I'd just seen him the day before. Then Graves showed me the body at the morgue. Riley's voice broke completely. It was Aiden. Same leather jacket, same features, same everything. But when I looked at his face, something was wrong. It was like looking at a photograph instead of a person. Too perfect, too still. And his hands. She held up her own hands, examining them as if seeing them for the first time. His hands were completely unmarked. No grease under the nails, no calluses from working at the shop. Aiden's hands were never clean. He was a mechanic. Logan exchanged glances with Harper. You think the body in the morgue wasn't actually Aiden? I don't know what I think. All I know is that after the funeral, I couldn't stay in this valley. Every time I drove past mile marker 37, I saw that Camaro crumpling against the embankment. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Aiden screaming, "It's me." I moved to Oregon and tried to forget. I changed my name for a while, avoided anything connected to San Benito. but you can't run from something like this forever. Why did you come back? Zoe asked. Riley stood and walked to a window overlooking the townhouse complex. Because 3 years ago, on November 14th, 2021, I had a dream. Aiden appeared to me, looking exactly as he did that night, 22 years old, leather jacket, that intense expression he got when he was working on an engine. He didn't speak. He just pointed toward the valley toward Highway 46. When I woke up, I knew I had to come back. Have you seen the car since returning? Harper's voice was gentle but insistent. Twice. Once from a distance, driving past my townhouse around 2 in the morning. The second time was 3 weeks ago. I drove out to mile marker 37 at midnight, parked near the Memorial Cross, and waited. At exactly 1:47 a.m., the Camaro appeared. It drove right past me, and I saw the driver clearly. Riley turned to face them, her expression haunted. It was Aiden. Not someone who looked like him. It was him. Same age, same face. Same way he held the steering wheel with both hands at 10 and 2, because his father had drilled proper driving technique into him. Logan pulled out his phone and showed Riley the camera footage from his pursuit. Is this what you saw? Riley studied the images, nodding slowly. That's him. That's exactly him. Riley, Harper said carefully, I need to ask you something important. The night of the crash that you witnessed, the one where the driver died, did you ever see that person's face clearly? No. Just Aiden's reaction when he looked inside the car. And the accident report from 2 days later when Aiden supposedly died, did Deputy Graves ever explain how Aiden could have crashed in the same spot where you'd already seen a crash? Riley's eyes widened as the implication sank in. No. He just said it was a tragic coincidence, that Aiden must have lost control in the same place. But that doesn't make sense. Aiden drove that road hundreds of times. He knew every curve, every dip. And after seeing the first crash, he would have been extra careful near that spot. Zoe had been taking notes furiously. What if there was only one crash? What if the person who died in the Camaro on November 14th, 1980 was Aiden Cole, but the Aiden you saw afterward was someone else, an imposter? That's insane, Riley protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Zoe pressed. Think about it. Identical appearance, but wrong details. Clean hands instead of a mechanic's hands. You said yourself that looking at the body felt like looking at a photograph instead of a person. What if someone staged Aiden's death and replaced him? Logan's mind raced through possibilities. But why? What would be the motive? Harper had gone quiet again, her analytical mind piecing together fragments. Riley, you said the party that night was at Mason Graves's house. Deputy Graves's son. What was Mason doing in 1980? He was Army intelligence, home on leave. He'd been stationed somewhere overseas, Germany, I think. And after that night? Riley frowned, trying to remember. He went back to his posting a few days after Aiden's funeral. I remember because he gave a eulogy that seemed oddly detached, like he was reading from a script. A few years later, I heard he'd left the military and gone into private security work. Harper pulled out her phone and began typing rapidly. Private security or intelligence contractor? I don't know. Why does it matter? Because, Logan said, pieces falling into place, if Mason Graves was involved in intelligence work, he would have had access to resources that could make someone disappear or make someone appear to die. You think this is some kind of government conspiracy? Riley's voice rose with disbelief. I think we need to talk to Mason Graves, Harper said grimly. And we need to find out what really happened at that party on November 14th, 1980. Zoe checked her watch. It's Saturday afternoon. We have exactly 6 days until the 44th anniversary. If there's a pattern to the sightings, whatever's happening is going to reach a peak on November 14th. Riley moved back to her chair and sat down heavily. Exhaustion etched into every line of her face. There's one more thing. The night I saw the Camaro 3 weeks ago, after it passed me at mile marker 37, I followed it. I know I shouldn't have, but I had to understand. It led me to Cole Automotive, Aiden's father's old shop. "We were just there," Logan said. "Tyler Shaw showed us the original Camaro. It's covered in dust, hasn't been started in decades." "I know, I saw it through the window, but here's what doesn't make sense. The Camaro I followed didn't stop at the shop. It drove straight through the closed bay door like it wasn't even there, passed through solid metal and disappeared inside. When I got out of my car to look, the bay door was still closed, locked tight. But I could hear an engine running inside the building clear as day. It ran for exactly 3 minutes, then stopped. When I pressed my ear to the door, I heard footsteps, someone walking around inside, then silence. The implications hung heavy in the air. Logan felt reality shifting again, the ground beneath his feet turning uncertain. Either Riley was delusional, or the laws of physics were being violated on a regular basis in the San Benito Valley. "We need to stake out that shop," Logan said. "Tonight. If the Camaro appears again, we need to document everything. And we need to find Mason Graves," Harper added. "I'll start making calls. If he's still alive, he owes us some answers." Riley stood slowly, moving to a bookshelf where she retrieved a small wooden box. "Before you go, there's something Aiden gave me the night before everything happened. He said he'd been working on a project at the shop and wanted me to keep this safe. I never understood why." She opened the box to reveal a single key on a plain metal ring. "It's labeled Proof. I don't know what it unlocks." Logan took the key, examining it. It was old-fashioned, the kind used for padlocks or filing cabinets. The word Proof had been etched into the metal with what looked like a hand engraver. "Can I keep this?" he asked. Riley nodded. "If it helps you understand what happened to Aiden, the real Aiden, then take it. I've carried that key for 44 years, and it's done nothing but weigh me down. Maybe it'll mean something to you." As they prepared to leave, Riley grabbed Logan's arm. "Deputy Reed, if you find out the truth about that night, promise me something. Promise me you'll tell me whether the man I loved actually died in that crash, or if I abandoned him when he needed me most. I've spent 44 years wondering if I could have saved him somehow." Logan met her eyes and saw the depth of guilt and grief that had haunted her for nearly half a century. "I promise. Whatever we find, you'll know the truth." Outside, the afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the western hills. Logan, Harper, and Zoe stood beside their vehicles, each processing what they'd learned. "This is bigger than a ghost story," Zoe said quietly. "Something happened in 1980 that someone went to extraordinary lengths to cover up. And every year, on the anniversary, the truth tries to surface," Harper added. "Literally, if that car is some kind of echo or residual energy from what happened." Logan held up the key Riley had given him. "We've got 6 days to figure out what this unlocks and what Mason Graves knows. Because if November 14th is as significant as we think, we need to be ready for whatever's coming." "You think something different is going to happen this year?" Zoe asked. Harper's expression was grave. 44 years. That's significant in some numerological traditions. It's a master number, represents major life changes and revelations. If there's any truth to the pattern, this anniversary might be the one where everything finally comes to light. "Then we'd better move fast," Logan said. Harper tracked down Mason Graves. "Zoe, start researching what was happening in 1980. Government operations, intelligence activities, anything that might connect to Army intelligence and this valley. I'm going back to Cole Automotive tonight with a camera and enough coffee to stay alert until dawn." "You're going alone?" Harper frowned. "I'm a deputy. It's less suspicious if I'm conducting an official investigation. Besides, if that Camaro shows up, I want a clear shot at following it without worrying about civilians." They separated with a plan, each pursuing their own thread of the mystery, hoping that somewhere in the tangle of decades-old secrets and impossible sightings, they'd find the truth about Aiden Cole and the ghost car that refused to let his memory rest. As Logan drove toward the downtown station to requisition surveillance equipment, he passed mile marker 37. The memorial cross stood silent in the fading light, its faded flowers trembling in the evening breeze. 6 days until November 14th. 6 days to solve a mystery that had confounded everyone who'd encountered it for 44 years. In his pocket, the key labeled proof felt heavier than its physical weight suggested, as if it carried the burden of all those years of unanswered questions. The temperature dropped sharply after sunset, typical for California valleys in mid-November. Logan sat in his personal truck across the street from Cole Automotive, bundled in a heavy jacket with a thermos of coffee on the dashboard and a high-definition camera mounted on a tripod in the passenger seat. The street was deserted. This section of Palmetto had been dying for years, businesses relocating to newer developments on the valley's edges. It was 11:47 p.m. on November 13th, minutes away from the 44th anniversary of Aiden Cole's death. Logan had been in position since 9 o'clock, watching the dark shop and reviewing everything they'd learned over the past week. Harper had tracked down Mason Graves, living in Arizona, working as a consultant for a private military contractor. When she'd called him, he'd hung up immediately. Her follow-up calls went straight to voicemail. His silence spoke volumes. Zoe had uncovered something more tangible, a classified Army intelligence operation code-named Reflection that had been active in 1980. The details were heavily redacted, but the few documents she'd found through Freedom of Information Act requests mentioned identity confirmation protocols and domestic asset protection. The operation had been shut down in 1982 amid allegations of ethical violations, and Logan had spent 3 nights staking out Cole Automotive, watching and waiting. The first 2 nights had been uneventful, but tonight felt different. The air carried a charge, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. His radio crackled. Unit 7 dispatch, we've got multiple calls coming in about a black Camaro on Highway 46. Witnesses report the vehicle heading toward downtown, approximate speed 90 miles per hour. Logan grabbed his radio. Copy dispatch. I'm in position downtown. We'll intercept. His pulse accelerated. This was it, the anniversary night, the moment when everything had been building toward. At precisely midnight, Logan heard it, that distinctive rumble of a high-performance V8 engine. He raised his camera, finger poised over the record button. The sound grew louder, approaching from the south. Then the Camaro appeared, gliding down Palmetto Street like a shadow made solid. Logan began recording as the vehicle slowed in front of Cole Automotive. Through his telephoto lens, he could see the driver clearly, Aiden Cole, or whatever phenomenon wore his face, staring at the shuttered shop with an expression of profound longing and rage. The Camaro stopped completely, its engine idling with that deep, throaty rumble. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, impossible as it seemed, the car began to shimmer, its edges becoming indistinct, as if it was being viewed through heat waves on a summer highway. Logan's camera captured every moment as the Camaro phased through the closed bay door exactly as Riley had described, passing through solid metal like light through glass. The moment it disappeared inside, every light in Cole Automotive blazed to life, illuminating the interior with harsh fluorescent brightness. "Jesus!" Logan breathed. He grabbed his flashlight and sidearm, abandoning the camera to sprint across the street. The key Riley had given him was in his pocket. He had a feeling he was about to learn what it unlocked. The side entrance was locked, but Logan's lockpick skills from his early patrol days came back quickly. Inside, the building thrummed with energy, not just the Camaro's engine, but something deeper, like the building itself was vibrating at a frequency just below human hearing. He moved through the cluttered office toward the shop floor, his flashlight beam cutting through darkness that the overhead lights somehow failed to dispel. The rumble of the engine was louder now, echoing off concrete walls with physical force. Logan emerged onto the shop floor and froze. 2 Camaros sat side by side, the dust-covered original that had been there for decades, and beside it, a pristine black Z28 that gleamed as if it had just rolled off the showroom floor. The running car's driver door stood open, green dashboard lights casting an eerie glow, but there was no driver. "Aiden Cole," Logan called out, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I know you're here. I know something happened on November 14th, 1980. Talk to me." Footsteps echoed from somewhere deeper in the shop, the parts storage area beyond the main floor. Logan followed the sound, his hand resting on his service weapon. The footsteps led him to a heavy metal door he hadn't noticed during his previous visit, tucked behind shelves of old parts and supplies. The lock on the door was substantial, industrial grade, and it matched the key in Logan's pocket perfectly. The key turned with a solid click. Logan pulled the door open to reveal a descending staircase, not original to the building but a later addition. Someone had excavated beneath Cole Automotive, creating a hidden space. The footsteps descended below. Logan followed, flashlight beam bouncing off concrete walls. The staircase ended in a small underground room, maybe 15 feet square. Filing cabinets lined one wall. A workbench held various electronic equipment that looked decades old. And in the center of the room stood a man. At first glance, he was Aiden Cole, 22 years old, leather jacket, dark hair, sharp features. But as Logan's flashlight illuminated his face, the illusion fractured. The man's eyes were wrong, too aware, too haunted, aged in a way that didn't match his youthful face. "You found me," the man said. His voice was Aiden's, but layered with exhaustion and something like relief. "After 44 years, someone finally found me." "Who are you?" Logan demanded. "I'm Aiden Cole, the real one. The one who watched himself die on Highway 46 on November 14th, 1980. Logan's mind reeled, but he forced himself to focus. "Explain, from the beginning." The man who claimed to be Aiden moved to the workbench, his movements carrying the weight of decades despite his young appearance. "I was recruited by Army Intelligence in 1979. Mason Graves, we'd been friends since high school, he approached me with an opportunity. They needed someone with mechanical skills, someone who could work undercover in Soviet Eastern Europe, gathering intelligence. It was dangerous work, but they offered me protection, a new identity when the mission was over, enough money to start fresh somewhere else." "Operation Reflection," Logan said. Aiden's eyes widened with surprise. "You did your homework. Yes, reflection. The problem was, they didn't just give me a new identity, they gave me a replacement, a double. A man who looked enough like me that with some surgery and training, he could fool anyone who didn't know me intimately. His name was Connor Blake, ex-military covert operations specialist. They brought him to the valley 2 months before I was supposed to deploy. He studied me, learned my mannerisms, my speech patterns, everything. The plan was that when I left for Europe, Connor would seamlessly take over my life until the mission ended." Logan felt pieces clicking into place. "But something went wrong. Everything went wrong." Aiden's voice cracked. "The night before I was supposed to leave, November 14th, 1980, Connor took the Camaro without permission. He was supposed to stay away from Riley, from my family, until I was gone. But he wanted to test how well he could impersonate me. He went to Mason's party. And Riley saw him. Riley saw him, and I panicked. I couldn't let her interact with this stranger wearing my face. I followed in Riley's Honda, caught up with Connor on Highway 46. We were racing, both of us out of control, and then—" Aiden closed his eyes. Connor lost it on that curve. I watched my own face die in that crash. Watched my own body pulled from the wreckage. "But Mason Graves covered it up," Logan said. "He made sure the body was identified as you. It was supposed to be me. That was always the plan. Stage my death. Let Connor take over permanently while I disappeared into deep cover. Mason just accelerated the timeline. He convinced everyone that the body in the morgue was mine. He convinced my father, he convinced Riley. The only person who knew the truth was me. And you've been hiding here ever since?" Aiden's laugh was hollow. "Where else could I go? I was officially dead. My identity had been stolen by a man who then actually died. I couldn't come forward without exposing Operation Reflection, and Mason made it very clear that if I tried, I'd be eliminated as a security risk. So I hid in the one place no one would think to look, beneath my father's shop. Logan gestured around the underground room. Your father knew you were alive? Dad found me 3 days after the funeral. I'd broken into the shop at night, starving, desperate. When he saw me, he thought I was a ghost. It took hours to convince him I was real. Aiden's voice softened. He kept my secret for 39 years, fed me, brought me supplies, never told anyone. This room, he built it for me, gave me a place to exist, even if I couldn't really live. The sightings, the ghost car. That's been you? Every year on the anniversary, I take the Camaro, my real Camaro, and drive the route I drove that night. Mile marker 37, where Connor died wearing my face. It's the only time I let myself surface, the only time I risk being seen. I think, Aiden's voice broke. I think some part of me hopes that one year, someone will stop me, someone will ask the right questions and uncover the truth. Logan studied the man before him. The story was insane, impossible, but it fit every piece of evidence they'd collected. How are you still 22 years old? I'm not. Aiden reached up and touched his face. As his fingers made contact, the youthful features wavered, and for just a moment, Logan saw the truth. A man in his mid-60s, weathered by decades of isolation and guilt. Then the younger face reasserted itself. It's a projection, a trick of light and psychology. People see what they expect to see, the young man who died in 1980. But I'm 66 years old, and I've been trapped in this half-life for 44 years. Footsteps on the stairs made both men turn. Harper appeared in the doorway, breathing hard, her own flashlight cutting through the gloom. Logan, I saw the lights. She stopped, seeing Aiden. My God. Harper Lane, Aiden said softly. You chased me in 1987. You were the only one who came close to catching me. Aiden called. You're real. I'm real, and I'm tired, Harper. So tired of hiding. More footsteps. Zoe descended, camera in hand. She'd been documenting everything, Logan realized. Then Riley appeared, her face pale but determined. Tyler Shaw followed, having clearly been contacted by one of them. They gathered in that underground room beneath Cole Automotive, the living and the supposedly dead, as Aiden Cole told his full story. He showed them the files, evidence of Operation Reflection, photographs of Connor Blake before the surgery that transformed him, communications between Mason Graves and his intelligence handlers. Mason's still alive, Harper said when Aiden finished. Living in Arizona, he hung up when I tried to call him. He's been monitoring the situation, Aiden replied. Every year when I surface, he knows. He's kept tabs on me, made sure I didn't become a liability. But he's old now, like me. And Operation Reflection was shut down decades ago. The secrets that kept me buried don't matter anymore. Riley had been silent throughout, tears streaming down her face. Now she stepped forward. Aiden, why didn't you contact me? You had to know I would have helped you. Because you deserved a life, Riley. A real life, not one spent hiding a fugitive from a failed intelligence operation. I loved you too much to trap you in this. Aiden's aged face, visible now that he'd let his protective illusion drop, was etched with regret. When I saw you'd moved back to the valley 3 years ago, it took everything in me not to approach you. But you'd built a new life. I couldn't destroy that. You idiot, Riley said, her voice breaking. You beautiful, stubborn idiot. I never stopped loving you. Every relationship I had after you was a shadow. Every place I lived felt empty because you weren't there. Logan watched as Riley crossed the room and took Aiden's hands. The hands of a 66-year-old mechanic, calloused and worn. She looked into his real face, past the illusion to the man beneath, and smiled through her tears. We can fix this, Logan said. Operation Reflection is declassified. The people who forced you into hiding are retired or dead. You don't have to be a ghost anymore." "He's right," Harper added. "I've got contacts in federal law enforcement. We can get you legal status, clear your name. It won't be easy, but it's possible." Aiden looked around at the faces gathered in his underground prison, a prison his father had built out of love, that he'd accepted out of fear. "You really think I can just walk back into the world after 44 years? "You won't be alone," Tyler said. "Your family, Uncle Aiden. My dad's gone, but his shop is still here. Your shop. You can rebuild it, run it the way you and Grandpa Connor always planned." "And you'll have help," Zoe added. "This story needs to be told. Not as a ghost tale, but as a testament to government overreach and one man's incredible survival. I'll make sure it's told right." Logan held out his hand. "Come upstairs, Aiden. It's time to stop running. Time to let people see that the ghost of Highway 46 is actually a survivor." For a long moment, Aiden stared at Logan's outstretched hand. Then, slowly, he reached out and grasped it. His grip was strong, real, human. They emerged from the underground room together, climbing the stairs into the shop where two Camaros waited, one covered in dust and age, one gleaming and eternal. As they reached the main floor, the pristine Camaro's engine suddenly cut out. Its lights dimmed, and before their eyes it began to fade, becoming translucent, until it vanished entirely. "What was that?" Zoe breathed. Aiden smiled, a real smile that transformed his weathered face. That was Connor Blake, finally getting the rest he deserves. His echo, his unfinished business, it was tied to my hiding. Now that I'm coming into the light, he can let go. They stood together in Cole Automotive as November 14th arrived, the 44th anniversary of a death that had never really happened, and a life that had never really ended. Outside, the San Benito Valley lay quiet under cold stars. Harper made her phone calls, starting the legal process that would restore Aiden Cole to the world of the living. Riley never left his side, 44 years of separation dissolving in the reality of his presence. Tyler began making plans to reopen the shop, to bring it back to life, just as his uncle was being reborn. And Logan drove back to the station as dawn broke over the valley, carrying evidence that would rewrite 4 decades of local history. The ghost car of Highway 46 had been laid to rest, but the man who'd driven it had finally found his way home. 3 months later, on a warm February afternoon in 2025, Cole Automotive reopened. Aiden Cole, legally restored to life after the most unusual case of identity recovery in California history, stood beside the bay doors as customers lined up to welcome him back. Riley Quinn Cole, they'd married quietly in January, handled the business side while Aiden did what he'd always loved, working on engines, keeping the valley's cars running, rebuilding the life that had been stolen from him. The memorial cross at mile marker 37 still stood, but now it carried a new plaque. Connor Blake, 1957-1980. May he rest in peace. And on clear nights when the wind whispered through the San Benito Valley, the road lay quiet and empty. The ghost car had finally found its rest, and the man who'd driven it had finally found his way home.